Hey y'all, it's Tony with Bay Street Outfitters in Beaufort, South Carolina. It's hot outside, so I'm going to show you the pattern that I use most during the summertime. So this pattern here is basically an adaptation on the redfish slider that we all know. I tie it a little bit bulkier and a little bit flashier for summertime conditions. Also tied a little bit larger. So we're going to start off by using a size 1 heavy gauge hook. In this pattern, it's really the smallest that I'm going to go. Sometimes I'll bump up to a 1/0 or a 2/0 on this fly. Get this guy clipped into your vise. We're going to lay down a good thread base on our hook here. This will just help, keep material from spinning as we're tying it on. And then for weight, to get this guy down, we are going to use some medium nickel eyes. That'll just help sink this fly down just a little bit in the water column. What I like to do on these is your basic figure 8 wraps in, and then your helicopter wraps underneath, and that'll just help keep everything locked in place. With this being primarily a redfish fly, at this point it'd be nice to hit it with a little bit of glue. That glue will help keep those eyes straight and not rotating when that redfish maybe gets it down, the fly down into its crushers. All right, next we're going to move this thread all the way to the back, making sure we have a good thread base going all the way to the back. And then what we're going to do is tie in some Zonker strip. What I like to do here is measure the leather, the length of the hook shank, give it an angled cut. And then tie this guy into the back. And I'll angle that a little bit towards me. That way when I start putting that rotational pressure on it, it'll start wrapping around the hook and lay down just fine and straight on the back there. All right, now that we've got that in, it's time to add a little bit of flash. All right, so the flash that I'm going to use is going to be some copper crystal flash. Copper is just a pretty common color for us to use here. I'm going to pull out 2 strands, get them to lay down nice and straight. And then what I'll do is fold them over, give them a cut, fold them over again, and give them a cut. And then I will wrap them around my thread and tie them in. So they face back, kind of splay out there. Now we're on to the next step. So the next step is, a little bit different than what I see a lot of people doing. Normally people would just stop at this step right here. But what we're going to do is take some crosscut Zonker strips. We're going to tie those in, but we're going to palmer them in. The reason for this step is it's going to provide a little extra bulk there in the tail. When that Zonker strip that we've already tied in gets wet, it's going to sort of contract. You'll get some rebound as you're stripping it, but not as much as when we complete this step here. So all we're going to want to do, tie these guys in so the fur is facing back. Just get some of that leather there. Advance our thread forward just a little bit. And then we're only going to take a couple of turns, but you can see how that has bulked that tail up tremendously. You can modify this by tying in something like Arctic fox or anything like that that's got a little bit of bulk. Marabou wouldn't work quite as well in this step. But we're going to tie that off. trim it and not worry about it being too pretty because it's going to all be covered up by the next step here. All right, so now that we've got that locked in, what we want to do is add some bulk and some flash to this fly. So we're going to take two forms of flash here. One is going to be just our traditional Palmer chenille. We're going to tie that in first. It's sort of counterintuitive because that's going to be the material that is on top of this fly. But you'll see why it's important to tie that in first here in a second. What we're going to do is take in this Rootbeer chenille. We're going to tie this in. The reason why we're tying in two separate forms of flash, if we were to just tie in that first Palmer chenille, what you would find is that it would start to lay down flat, almost like you would see on something like a Creel X fly. You know, everything would be just facing back, and really what we want here is that bulk. So we're going to wrap this material, this estaz, away from us, and then we are going to only make a couple of wraps, and then we're going to tie that off and trim that material. And then we'll take our Rootbeer Palmer chenille and start wrapping that the opposite direction, and that'll just make sure that the fibers don't get tucked down into that other material, and we'll advance that just in front of the material there we've already tied in, and we'll tie that off. All right, and so now we're just gonna take our whip finisher here, kind of pick out some of that thread, some of those fibers. And we've really got a lot more bulk here than what we normally would have. Brush those fibers back a bit, get them away from the eye of the hook. Then we're good to go. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to tie in some legs. Leg color here really doesn't matter. Having legs themselves probably doesn't matter that much. Sometimes you just want to be proud of the fly that's in your box, so we'll tie in some legs. And what we'll do is we'll get one set of legs, and we'll tie it in by wrapping it around the hook thread in a V-style pattern. Get that facing backwards, and then do the same on the other side. We'll fold those back and we'll trim them to about where the Krystal flash ends. All right, and so really for the last material here, what we're going to do, tie in some deer hair. If you wanted to modify this step, if you don't like to work with deer hair, you could tie in something like EP brush, or a brush from Fulling Mill, something to just give it a little bit of bulk here. But we'll trim these fibers up. And then we'll pick out that under fur there. All that fluff needs to go. All right. And with our deer hair pointing backwards, the tips of it pointing backwards, I'm going to give two light wraps around, and then we're going to start spinning that into place. And basically you're just applying pressure all the way around in these wraps. And then once you get that locked in there pretty good, what we'll do is we'll brush all those fibers back. And now comes the fun part where we get to give this guy a haircut. So to trim this guy up, I like to take my razor blade here and just kind of rock it back and forth on this underneath side. It is going to be cut pretty smooth. You're not going to have really any tips. Facing backwards, you're going to kind of trim it all off. And then as we rotate this around, we'll start to leave some of the tips to give that profile that we like to see for a slider. Now we've got it shaped up the majority of the way. Yeah, we are looking pretty good to go there. All right, so last step would be to tie in a weed guard here. It's not a Lowcountry fly unless it has a weed guard. So I'm going to show you how I do my weed guards here. So what I do is I take a piece, short strand of absolute hard mono, and I use the 30-pound. That seems to be, kind of the ticket for me. And I'll take some flat, blunt needle nose pliers, and I will make a little flat piece on my weed guard here. And that'll just give me a point to tie this onto the hook. It'll make it a lot easier to capture since it's not round any longer. And then after I've tied that in, what I'll do is I'll bend it backwards towards the eye of the hook. Make sure that it's in there nice and tight. And then I'll trim it. And really when you're trimming weed guards, what I like to see is it come down just a little bit past or right to that hook point when you're bending it backwards to it. And then from here, all we got to do is throw a whip finish in there. Maybe if you like half hitches, you could throw some half hitches in there. I like to use whip finishes. Seems like for me it lays down a lot cleaner. And then we will trim that off. And from here, you just glue your wraps and you're good to go. And that right there is the fly that I use most during the summertime here in the Lowcountry. Hope it works out for you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for checking out our YouTube video. Be on the lookout for our future projects. If you have any questions, give us a call at the Outfitter or visit us online at baystreetoutfitters.com.